It's Lisa from Been There, Got Out. I was just talking to my guest, Marnie Grunman from Canada, and I am thrilled, there she is, thrilled to have her back. You did it.
I'm in.
Okay, good, 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 good. Okay, I was saying the timing is just perfect because not that this is a fun topic to talk about, but lately the theme has been abandonment by a parent. But before we even get into that, Marty, introduce yourself to people that have not seen you here before, who don't know about your celebrity status on TikTok in particular.
Okay, well, my name is Marnie Grunman, and I am a survivor of a narcissistic family system. My mother she's still alive, a sociopath and a narcissist, and I've been no contact for the better part of 30 years. Because of the abuse that I was experiencing in my home, I ended up running away multiple times. At the age of 13, it stuck, and I ended up living on the streets and raising myself up off of the streets as a result of that. And I wrote a book, began sharing my stories a little bit over a decade ago, to sensitize people to the reasons why kids run away and for prevention. And it kind of took on an extra layer in life of its own, in that I found there were a lot of people who came from narcissistic family systems the way that I did. And now that's really what I specialize in more than anything else, is how to heal from those systems, how to navigate those relationships if you're in them, how to navigate low contact or no contact, and that sort of thing. And a byproduct of that is a lot of survivors of those systems, because that is the love we know, marry into those systems as well, which is where you and I have so much crossover.
Yeah, because I know so many of our clients are struggling with that, and I love to have excellent resource to send them to, because you do individual counseling, but you also do groups, and then we're going to talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah.
Okay, so like I started saying earlier, the theme recently seems to be about abandonment. I know when I first got in touch with you, not first, but just recently, most recently got in touch with you, I said that that we have a client with a really young child, and I want to talk about that. But I first want to talk about something that happened today with someone who has more than one child, and one of the child has special needs, and they're going through the narcissistic abuse cycle where the narcissistic ex, or whatever he is, has discarded not just the wife, but the kids in general, and moved on to new supply. And so one of the children is a teenager, and I resonated so powerfully with this person's story, because that's what my kids went through when they were 11 and 14, where, you know, as we were getting the divorce, I thought it's going to be like a normal thing, and they're going to see him on the weekends and sometimes during the week, and we're both going to be doing our thing just separately. That's not what happened at all. So basically, he dropped out of their lives as we were separating. I remember very clearly, he had moved out, and a week later he came and he just dropped my son's library card and YWCA card on the thing. It was like, I guess I won't be needing this anymore. It was like, what? And I feel like that's, that was so painful for me. I can't even imagine what it was like for the kids at the time. They've luckily been doing better, but now we're talking to people at the beginning of that, and I just thought you would be the perfect person who can hopefully offer some comfort and some perspective on what it's like and what people can do about that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, my story's a little different in that I was so much younger. I was 14 months old. My father wasn't a narcissist, by the way. He was running from my mother, but I didn't know that at the time. You know, obviously I don't understand that. And I didn't really have a concept of what it was like to have a dad until my mother married surprise husband, you know, number 3, who, hi, here's your new daddy kind of thing. So I really didn't have any sort of concept. But I did know that I had a dad out there. I did watch, my dad was a pro bowler. I watched him on TV. People would point him out. I knew he existed. I just didn't understand why he wasn't around. And by contrast, I watched my brother get picked up by his dad. And I couldn't understand, because I was so little, why I couldn't go with him. And nobody was talking to me except to say that it was his loss. Now, can you explain to me how a 5-year-old, a 10-year-old, even a 15-year-old is going to understand what that means? We don't understand that, because the only thing we're feeling is our loss. And, why don't we have a dad like other people? And occasionally I would hear the word, can I say the B word on here? I don't know. The word bastard in reference to him from time to time, which also had no meaning for me. And so what I really learned from that, thankfully, I'm not in that situation, but what I really learned from that is that we have to have really open communication with our children. And we have to make it so that they don't feel that we're hurting for them when they're bringing us these conversations, because then they take on responsibility for our emotional well-being, and that's also going to shut them down. And they're likely already having had experienced enough of that because of having a narcissistic parent. One of the ways they control people is through responsibility for their emotions, right? Particularly with their children. Making sure that you're checking in and asking questions. Well, how does that make you feel? I'm confused. I don't understand why. There is no good explanation except to say that some people do things to serve their own needs because of where they are, and they don't care about or recognize that they're hurting other people, especially their own children. And to be very careful in the delivery of these messages, because our children are half of each of us. And if we're not speaking appropriately about the other spouse, no matter who that person is, they take that to be that you don't like that part of them as well. And that also injures their self-esteem. So they have the abandonment by that parent who's behaving badly, for lack of a better way of putting it. And then they're hearing how horrible they are. And it's like, well, wait a minute, because that is a part of me too.
Yeah. I'm thinking about the person that I spoke to earlier today, and she said that the teenager was saying, wouldn't it be better if he were just dead? Because then I could grieve and people would understand and they would feel bad for me and bring us flowers and food. But instead, it's like, I can't, because he's still right there, but he's gone. So it's like he's died, but he's still right here.
That was that shows how in touch with his emotions that child is with their emotions, and how much they trust that parent. That's actually really remarkable that they articulated that. And grieving the living is a thing. I mean, as adults, when we go no contact, we grieve the living, right? And it's true, there's a lot of judgment attached to it, and people want you to move on because they're uncomfortable with you feeling bad. So instead of the other adults saying, that really sucks that your parent left you, and I'm so sorry, is there something I can do for you? It's more like, yeah, but you're going to be okay, and people glossing and brushing over it. And the only thing you can really do in that situation as a parent is validate those feelings, because you can't change them. Right. And so, and also praise those feelings for their recognition, and say it is a horrible thing that your other parent has chosen to do this, and I'm so sorry, and if there's anything I can do, let me know. There's no
Yeah
here, it's it's a wound that needs therapy, and will have an impact in some capacity for the rest of that person's life, for sure.
Yeah. So do you have anything that you feel like worked for you in particular? I mean, because you didn't have a parent who could validate your feelings, right? So
I didn't have
how'd you get here, Marnie?
I was like alone on an island with a bunch of people around me that weren't showing up. I mean, that's really what my childhood looked like. And it was like, well, I guess my mother's right. I'm not likable or lovable. So in that way, it was different, because I didn't really have anyone that I could go to or even ask questions about my father. It was a wound that in adulthood I had to learn to heal on my own. And fortunately for me, because my father wasn't narcissistic, but rather, we're going back to 1968 when things were a lot different as well. in terms of dads, like, they weren't thought of as being that important the way that we know that they are now, right? Not excusing him in any way. He took ownership. We ended up with a relationship in my adult life. That was a really good one, and I got lucky on that front. Nobody showed up. And so the thing that I would say about that is, even the fact that these children have one solid parent, that's going to do a lot to heal those wounds and give that child stability. Because it's not about the number of adults or even who the adults are. It's the fact that they have somebody who's a safe place to fall. And that does take us a long way.
Yeah, I mean, I've been reading recently how one of the most positive predictors of good mental health, especially for teenagers, is to have nurturing relationships with adults.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Because also look at, teenagers, they're trying to figure out where they fit in. And part of that is, who are they learning from observationally? Who are their role models? Who are those people that are teaching them that they are worth caring about, so that they gravitate in directions that give them something good rather than something bad, right? So having a stabilizing force, no matter who that is a game changer. But especially if at least they have one parent, that's going to make a much larger positive impact. And I think that sometimes we forget that one parent can make it so that that child is successful, especially if they're seeking out therapy for that child, and making sure that they have a space that is not that parent to talk about things, so that the messaging that they're getting is likely consistent with what that parent is saying. But it's like, well, you're supposed to say that because you love me. And being able to go to a professional who's objective carries a lot of weight because of that.
Yeah, okay, I have two thoughts at the same time, and I'm like, I want to make sure I get both of them in. What about when you have a kid that's blaming themselves? Because isn't that what happens?
Yeah, that's the first thing that a child is going to do. It doesn't matter and especially if they see that parent go and build a new family or marry a new family and be parents to those other children, because of the fact that they're showing their child up close and personal, I can love those ones, just not you. So the number one place a child is going to go to is, it's my fault. When kids' parents divorce under the best of circumstances, children feel that responsibility. If I just behaved better and that sort of thing, right? And so it's really important, rather than saying this is not your fault, because it's almost like, well, maybe I didn't think of that, even though they probably did. It's better to say, no matter what other little child was there, like let's say born under the same circumstances, your father or your mother would have done the same thing, because it's who they are. And putting it that way can be really, really helpful, and give them it's a realistic perspective, because it's absolutely the truth as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So the other thought I was going to say, which sort of ties into that, is there's controversy over how to explain the other person's behavior, and you gave great ideas of how to do it. But sometimes parents are told, or they think that they're supposed to say, well, that other person loves you. They do love you. And in my own life, I felt like it was controversial, but I said, that's not
Look
love. Like, that's because I don't want them to think that that's love. They're ignoring you, but that's love. It's like, I'm sorry, but that's not love. That's not how people who love each other treat each other.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things about that. When you tell a child, a parent, or a person who is harming them loves them, you've just aligned with the person who's hurting them. You want to shut somebody down, go ahead and do that, because that's going to do that, if at no other level than subconsciously. It's confusing, because on the one hand, they have a parent who's supporting them and modeling healthy love, and on the other hand, you're saying, this person who abandoned me loves me? Absolutely not. And we shouldn't be speaking to the emotions of other people towards other people anyway. We're not inside of their head. We can't give them actual logical reasons as to why somebody would do something so absolutely harmful and reprehensible, right? There's no good reason for that. And I think being honest about that and saying, you know what, some things are not good reasons for. And I can't say what your other parent is or is not feeling. I can say what they're doing is wrong and I'm so sorry. And it's about who they are. And somehow this is how they meet their needs. And it's not okay. It's not okay. And there's nothing wrong with saying that. You're not saying this person is a horrible person. You could be thinking of it, but you know, you're not eviscerating them. You're not trashing them. And that is so important, because sometimes on the flip side of this whole thing, fast forward another 20 years from now, that kid is 35, talking to that parent who abandoned them. Well, I left because your other parent made me. And that's going to hold water if the parent who's been standing there parenting isn't honest and careful.
Yeah, yeah. I was thinking also, it's tricky with other adults. I know for my kids in particular, they will sometimes be asked about their father, and my daughter is just like, I don't really want to talk about it, especially with people that she doesn't know well. Do you have any ideas, either from your own life or with clients, of how to respond when other people start asking, like, oh, well, why don't you talk to your, I know you have a lot of experience with this on the other side, but like, why aren't you in touch with your parent?
So before I started speaking out, when I was hiding it because I didn't want people to know I was this horrible person, because I was blaming myself, it all goes right back around. I would just say, I'm just not close to that person, and shut it right down. And if somebody kept pushing at me, I would ask them why they're asking. Well, I'm just curious. Oh, and just, oh.
Love it.
You know, less is more, and putting them on the defensive and mirroring back to them. I call it flipping the mirror, so that they can look at themselves and see what it is they're doing to meet their curiosity, because most of the time that's all it is. It's curiosity, it's conversation, without realizing, wait a minute, you know, you're hurting another person because you want to know about something that's absolutely none of your business, right? So flipping it around and going, oh, so you're curious. Why is that? And just continually, and that's a great way to teach children how to handle conflict as well. So this is a really good tool just to have in life in general, when somebody's coming at you to kind of, it's not that you're not going to answer a question if you feel it necessary, but it's always good to clarify and repeat it back to the other person, so that if you do answer the question, you're asking what was asked, not what you heard or thought you heard, right?
As you're talking, the wheels in my brain are spinning, because, you know, we do a lot with strategic communication with our clients in terms of dealing with their high conflict personality partners. And I'm thinking there's a way to use that as well, because they often will ask questions like, what are are you going to go with the kids to this thing, to this trip or event, that it's just like, and we'll say it's none of their business. So yeah, that fits beautifully.
Yeah. Well, and that way, when you don't come with it's like, it's none of your business, that kind of thing, you're not on the defensive. You know, right. When you flip it back around on them, it's actually really empowering. And when you master that, you feel really peaceful about it. So it's not going to have that trigger effect, which is what they're going for. Because when you start to see that it works, it's like, oh, we're going to play this game, are we? Okay, let's go. Let me roll my sleeves up. I got this, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I love it, because you're in control the whole time, and you're calm.
And you're calm, and you're respecting yourself and your needs, and creating boundaries without being hurt.
Right. And again, boundaries serve to protect you, not to force somebody to behave a certain way. You're just saying, I'm not going to let you get at me.
Yeah,
you can
exactly.
Keep going and do whatever, and I can't stop you, but
that's it. You can't. And that's what I always say. The same thing that I say to my clients, or to anyone really. We don't set boundaries for other people. Like, I don't tell somebody else, well, I might tell somebody else, don't do something. And if they do it, I'm just going to disengage. I'm not saying don't do something or else. I'm enforcing the boundary. I'm keeping myself safe.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we can't control other people's behavior.
Right. one of our clients said her attorney told her the other day, you know, the abuse is never going to stop. There's nothing you can do to make it stop, but it's how you handle it. And it is a lot more empowering to be like, you know what? I'll have to figure it out. And you can a lot of times.
Yeah, you can minimize the effect for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so now let's talk about triggers. You had said that so many people are hard on themselves, and this doesn't have to relate to the abandonment issue, just like another thing kind of ties in. But people push themselves. They're like, I should be over it, or they'll apologize. And also they say that somebody said something the other day, they said, you know, years have passed and I feel bad talking about it to my friends and family. Like usually they're talking about being in the legal system for a long time. And they're like, and so I just stopped talking about it, but I'm still going through it.
Yeah.
So what do you say to people who feel like I should be over this already? Court's another thing, but the trauma.
Thing I say is, why should you be over it if it's something that hurts you? You know, why? Why is it important to be over anything? It's important to honor your feelings. And if that's what you're feeling and you try to push past them instead of work through them, you're going to continue to feel that way a whole lot longer because you're not honoring your feelings. You're not giving yourself any grace. You know, life is hard sometimes. These situations are hard, and we owe it to ourselves to allow ourselves the space, to hold space for ourselves, to feel bad, to be angry, to cry, to do whatever it is we need to do in the timing that we need to do it, as long as it's not impacting our life in a way that, you know, we can't get out of bed. That's a whole separate issue. You know, if it's creating dysfunction where you can't put one foot in front of the other, then you need to be looking at getting medications and getting some extra help. But if it's a thing of you're trying to process these emotions and this anger around real life things that are occurring or that you're still reeling from, it's okay to be where you are. And a really good thing to do is also journal about it. Write letters to yourself about it. You know, I used to write little Marnie, dear little Marnie, I'm so sorry this happened to you and I'm so angry about X, Y, and Z. And putting it on paper, not typing it on a computer, and having it in a journal form really helps us to process those emotions and actually helps open up some of our memories where we know we're really angry, but we don't remember all the little things as to why. And all of a sudden you validated yourself in an environment where nobody is going to do that for you. And that's very cathartic.
Yeah, I mean, I personally have been journaling for about 40 years. I have loads of journals, and I feel like, and I also was a creative writing teacher, but when you there's something called free writing.
Yeah.
And so when you just start writing, a lot of times you don't know what's going to come out. And sometimes I used to journal a lot late at night before I went to bed, but reading back on things from during my marriage, it's like, I can't believe I always knew things and I had written them down, but I forgot about them during the day. And you can look at these patterns that are just incredible that you don't even realize you know. And it also feels good. I feel like getting things out of my head when I can't sleep in particular, it's almost like you need to like emotionally vomit them out. Like you have to get them out of your system and onto paper, and then you can kind of make more sense of them, even if you don't read back, but just to get them out. It's like some illness, just, you know.
I like the reading back, like maybe at like 90-day intervals or a little bit longer, because sometimes we feel so stuck and helpless, right? And if you go backwards and kind of read where you were, you can realize that you are growing. You have something that's tangible, that like, wow, oh my God, I can't believe I went through that and here I am now. So it can be also a really positive experience to go, oh, you know, it was actually worse than I thought and I made it through. So whatever's coming now, I got this. Yeah,
that is so important, because we love to focus on progress. Like progress is success. You're moving on. Or getting better.
Yeah.
Something you had just said, I was thinking about with emotions and anger and getting things out. I was just listening to an interview with Dr. Gabor Mate, and he was talking about a study that was done on, I think, a group of women who had all kinds of anger about their marriages, and they found some huge number who suppressed their anger and acted like everything is fine, had lots more physical illness.
Yeah. It's going to go
And
somewhere.
and we talked about the book, The Body Keeps the Score. So you can suppress it. You can feel like I should be over this, but if you're not over it, it's going to affect your body.
Yeah. If you haven't processed it. And the thing with Gabor Mate is he talks about a lot of things like ADHD as being a trauma response, right? And that if the approach that doctors took before, medication, and I believe in medication, I believe it has a time and a place for sure. But if we focused on what is at the root of these coping mechanisms and not just the medication, we would have a lot more people healing that much more quickly and likely not need the medications as much as well. Right. And there's also a lot of crossover with these different things like ADHD and complex PTSD that get missed because, some people are quick to go, I just want a pill. And of course, I want a happy pill too, But
Yeah.
is that what is in my best interest? No, it's not, because that doesn't teach me to develop the tools to function in life better by cleaning out some of the trauma and replacing my coping mechanisms or altering my coping mechanisms in a way that work for me instead of against me. Because we develop really good tools. We just have to use them properly.
Yeah, I didn't. I only recently learned that ADHD is an anxiety disorder,
Yeah.
and that it can change. And I find that so many of our clients, adults, have ADHD more than ever, and their kids have ADHD.
Yeah.
Also, do
Well,
you see that also?
yeah, I see that also. And one of the things that, I think that we're beginning to understand is that when we have children and our body chemistry has been altered through trauma, they're born with that alteration in place, right? So that's why
Yeah.
they would be predisposed to the same things, because that's what we're carrying at that point in time. So maybe it didn't run through the family in generations before because it didn't get developed. But if it got developed in your parent, then the chances are you are predisposed to whatever that is.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm trying to think. There was like a few things I wanted to talk to you about. What about you said that sometimes with trauma, survivors gaslight themselves.
We
Can you
minimize our
explain
own
that a bit?
trauma. Sorry?
Say it again?
We minimize our own trauma. It wasn't that
Yeah.
bad. Or somebody else had it worse, like we see other people who have been physically traumatized in life-altering ways, maybe somebody who's been blinded or something like that, and we tend to hold our trauma up to theirs. But the fact of the matter is, if somebody runs over my hand's broken and it hurts, and that's my trauma. And if somebody runs over someone else's both of their hands, that's their trauma. Mine isn't worse and theirs isn't worse. It's our original experience. But we have a tendency to minimize our trauma next to other people because that's what people do to us too. Oh, you don't know how bad I had it, or you don't know how bad this person had it. So we take that and we further invalidate ourselves. How we feel is how we feel, and what hurt us. And it's valid and it's real. And minimizing it takes away your opportunity to address it wholly and in the way that it deserves.
Yeah, I mean, we see minimizing constantly. People are always like, well, I feel bad. Even, we have this weekly legal abuse support group, and people have, I mean, the reason they're there is because it's an awful situation that's often going on for years. And someone will hear another person talk and they'll be like, I feel bad bringing up my situation because it's not as bad as the other person. It's like, it's bad. I had dinner with some friends of mine last night, and one of them, she wasn't dealing with a family court issue. She was dealing with a business issue, but it took like 9 years and millions of dollars in legal fees, and it really affected her health, her relationships, and everything. And as she was talking about it, I said, this is very similar to what our clients deal with. It's just not divorce. And she said, no, but I feel like, I'm really lucky, but I'm really lucky. And I was like,
How is that
But
lucky?
I feel it's almost like I don't want to talk about it. Like it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. I'm like, that's okay, but it's all right to feel upset.
When, like when somebody says to me, I feel bad bringing it up because, so and so, and I run groups too, right? I'll say, did it hurt you? Yes. Okay, then it's bad. That's it.
Yeah, yeah,
Something simple like that can drive it home as well. I'm really lucky to be alive today. There's no question in my mind. I recognize that.
right.
Does that take away from what I went through? No, that was not
Yeah,
lucky, right? So,
yeah, yeah. Good to remember that. All right, let's talk about emotional abuse. You said it's not just something that someone said, it's a theme of behavior. And we know emotional abuse affects so many people.
yeah.
That's like the most common kind of abuse, and it's hidden abuse, and so people don't take it as seriously. But tell us some more about emotional abuse. What do you mean by it's a theme?
I think that people associate emotional abuse with someone who tells a child, shut up all the time, or you're stupid, or you're not going to amount to anything. And yeah, that's certainly a part of it. Um, but it's the brainwashing and the programming that occurs through the emotional abuse. So in other words, a typical narcissistic abuser will say things like, everybody knows you're worthless. Nobody is
Mm,
ever going to believe you. People wonder why I even bother trying to be your parent. Those are ways of telling somebody that they're worthless without saying the words, you are worthless. And that's more of what emotional abuse looks like. It's those looks of warning that keep a child on pins and needles. That thing where that child doesn't know at any given moment if there's going to be some sort of eruption. And an eruption doesn't mean like this huge, big demonstrative, like screaming, yelling. An eruption could be, did you really do that today? That judgment kind of statement. So you have these kids who are being emotionally abused that are walking on eggshells, monitoring everybody there in their environment, not just their parent, because their parent has let them know that everybody looks at them exactly the same way. And this is really deep programming. And part of the result of that is that these children grow up learning that their worth and their validation comes from the outside instead of the inside. So what people say about them matters more than anything else. And that creates a child who's going to be a chameleon, who's going to echo their environment, who's going to adapt to other people's needs and not have their own thoughts and feelings and opinions, and therefore also not develop an identity effectively either. So you end up with these adults who are flailing around in the world. They have no concept of who they are, but they know that they're not worth anything. And it's really devastating. That is what emotional abuse does.
it's interesting because some of the things you're describing, I'm thinking about that interview that I was listening to again with Dr. Gabor Mate, and he was talking about social media's effect on children as well, with that whole like everything is about what other people think of you, you don't have any value, that kids really need to play, and using a device that with other people, all different ages, and using a device is not playing.
Yeah.
And how much it's damaging people because it's just what you said. It's everything depends on the other, the perception
Yeah.
of what other people think. But also when you were talking, I was thinking that phrases like that, like everybody thinks this or nobody thinks, that's also triangulation.
Yeah, absolutely. It's triangulation. It's letting you know also that you can't trust anyone and nobody's going to believe you all at the same time.
Yeah.
It guarantees that a child isn't going to be able to seek out a safe space because the world is dangerous. Everybody knows they're bad.
As you're saying this too, and Marty, this always happens, like you're saying something and I'm trying to take notes. I'm like, oh, I got to ask her about that. So I haven't done any studies, but I've noticed that a couple of boys that I've known, children of narcissistic mothers, I don't know if this crosses genders, whatever, but they don't seem like they feel comfortable opening up to anybody. They they seem like they're afraid to express opinions. They seem to have a harder time with relationships, like romantic relationships. Have you seen that with children of narcissistic parents where they don't want to say what they think?
So I see it differently male to female, not always, because it's also a birth order thing, right? So if there's two boys, there's likely going to be a golden and a either scapegoat or
Yeah.
non-existent child, right? If there's three kids, there's going to definitely be an invisible child, a golden child, and a scapegoat child. So that has a lot to do with it. I do see that if the mother is a narcissist, what I see with the boys is that they lack empathy for others. They're very entitled typically. They are very locked down in their feelings because they are emulating the feelings of people around them because they've not been able to develop separately from their mother, right? So that's their cue on how to feel. That's actually the cue for how all the kids are supposed to feel, is based on whoever the abuser is. But the child who's a golden child is the one who's going to take on the identical opinions, thoughts, and feelings of that abuser. And so while they may not end up being a narcissist, they're going to be pretty heavily traded, and it's hard for them to separate from that and get the help that they need because they don't think there's anything wrong with them, because they don't think there's anything wrong with the person who raised them.
Yeah, I mean, what I saw with one person in particular was, since he was a baby, when anyone tried to talk to him, his mother would jump in and answer for him. And so it was almost like he never had the opportunity to develop social skills. And so as he got older into an adult, it would be like you'd ask a question and he wouldn't say anything.
He probably had a tremendous amount of anxiety, you know, in even trying to communicate, because the messaging is your voice has no value. You shouldn't speak. I don't know if you've ever watched Mama's Boy, but you know that.
No.
So I just did a little. I watch these things because I like to see, not like, but it gives me a lot of insight into some of these behaviors. And Mama's Boy, if you ever watch the amount of control emotionally, that it's Mama's Boy, so it's all the women who are narcissistic, that the amount of emotional control that they have over their sons is phenomenal. And there's a lot of sexualization as well, which is a form of CSA. It's just not how we think of CSA, but it's more of kind of a no contact CSA. So things where there are inappropriate things discussed, for example. And it's like they become a pseudo spouse. And across the board, and not just for Mama's Boy, but this is what happens. The other spouse, the other parent, is non-existent. They work a lot. They spend a lot of time away from the house because they're on the escape. And every now and again, they swoop in as a buddy if they're invited, and then they're gone again.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I think it's, have you heard of Neil Strauss?
The name is familiar, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, he wrote a book. He had some issues with addiction, and then it got into, he got into exactly what you're describing with his mother towards the end of the book, and I didn't expect that.
Well, a lot of the golden children, for whatever reason, end up with substance abuse issues. And I think, you know, it's a self-medicating from the stress and anxiety of trying to maintain being in that good grace, because they do see the scapegoat child and they don't want to be them. So that drives them even closer to the abuser in behaving like them. So it does a lot of damage. Like people always go, well, the scapegoat always had it worse. There we go, comparing trauma again. The golden children are traumatized. The golden children have a place that they need to work to maintain, and they know that. They are aware that they have a part to play, and if that they fail in playing that part, they are then going to be the scapegoat child. So they live in fear as well.
So I'm thinking, if someone is out of that relationship and they see their ex is narcissistic and the kids have their different roles, like golden child, scapegoat, invisible child, is there anything they can do other than validate the kids' feelings? Is there anything they can do to sort of prevent? I mean, we hear often parents say, I see that one of my children is becoming like my ex-narcissistic spouse.
Yeah. There's a few things.
Frightening.
One of the things that the ex-narcissistic spouse is never going to do is check in with that child and ask how they're feeling and what their needs are and what they can do for them. So leading with that, I think, is very important because you're modeling something different through contrast for that child, and you're giving them a different perspective. You're teaching them a sense of empathy even in doing that, but also watching the dynamics between the children and addressing it in real time as it's happening. So the more entitled child is likely going to be not so nice to the other child, the scapegoat child, right? And so it's addressing it in a constructive way, like, do you think that's very nice? Well, yeah, I felt like doing that. Why did you feel like doing that? And engaging
So going deeper.
Going deeper and making them think and recognize without punishing them, without, I mean, sometimes you have to consequence them, but more as a way of starting dialogue and bringing awareness to their own behaviors and asking them even things like, do you think that that's going to serve you well to treat somebody that way? Does that feel good to you? And start bringing it back around. Sometimes, no matter how much you do that, it's a losing battle. But if you don't do that, you've lost the battle. So that is a technique that you can use. And also making all three or two of the children kind of responsible for each other, not in a parentified way, but in a, you know what, you need to have your siblings back. You two need to look out for each other because, you know, your siblings, and one day we're going to be long gone and you still have each other. And it would be nice if you're close, and really, you know, fostering a good relationship between the two of them, finding common interests for them and making sure that you're spending some time sharing those experiences, because shared experiences are very bonding. And what the narcissistic parent is doing is blowing apart those shared experiences and making sure they don't happen. So basically opposite day of what's going on over there.
Yeah, excellent, excellent advice. So, Marnie, you want to talk a little about, I mean, I know there's all kinds of other topics, but we'll have to save them for the next thing. But I got an email from you, and you said you're doing your groups. You want to talk about what you do in your groups and how people can find you?
So I have my new groups that are scheduled for the fall, and we do each one in 4 increments. So once a month for 4 months. That way nobody is tied in for a year. And the reason that I do that is people vacation or fall off or whatever. So it gives enough time for the group to become cohesive. A lot of people come back session after session. And it's a really safe space to talk about the experiences that you're having in real time and the dilemmas that you're going through in real time because of coming from a narcissistic family system. But the other thing that I do in each group is I do a guided portion where I will talk about things like, what is your coping mechanism? Where does it come from? And so we'll make that session out of coping mechanisms. What are the voices that you're still hearing from that narcissistic parent that is holding you back in your life today? What was the worst part or best part about going no contact or low contact? Things like that. So I'll bring a topic in and we build on it month by month. I also have started a new one for daughter-in-laws. Yeah, I know, right? Because daughter-in-laws of narcissistic in-laws are the ones who get blamed when things go sideways. There's so much pressure on the daughter-in-laws that nobody recognizes. And I'm sure on the son-in-laws as well, but right now the interest for these groups seems to be more female than male. So if I get enough son-in-laws out there, I'll start one for them as well. But the other thing is, because to your point earlier, the sons of narcissistic family systems tend to be somewhat disconnected with their emotions, tend to push things aside, even if they're no contact. They don't want to discuss these things, and these things live in our body and they affect how we treat one another. So helping provide support for these daughter-in-laws and navigating the relationship with their significant other to create a safe space for them to be able to open up and also to be able to handle, if there is contact, what's going on with the grandchildren, creation of boundaries, and not engaging in the battles that aren't theirs to engage in and things like that.
Ooh, I mean, I've never heard of something for daughter-in-laws.
I hadn't either. And I've recently, because of TikTok, I get daughter-in-laws who reach out to me. So I'm like, wow, there's a lot of daughter-in-laws out here that are really getting hung out to dry, because we recognize the children who have been abused in those family systems, the adult survivors. But, you know, 9 times out of 10, the reason an adult survivor of a narcissistic family system goes no contact with their main abuser is not because of what happened back there. It's because of what's happening right now. It's because the abuse continues, the trauma continues, the brainwashing, the gaslighting, the manipulation, the sabotaging. They're not walking away because of what happened then. They're walking away because nothing is changing now. And so with daughter-in-laws, they're living that in a way where setting a boundary is much more difficult because it's not their parent. Right?
Yeah.
And likely they were,
And they're in the middle because of the
they're
kids
in the
too.
middle. And in the beginning, I can guarantee you that 9 times out of 10, they were really close to that parent because that parent loved bombed them. That in-law love bombed them. And now they're going, oh, the mask has fallen. What do I do? You know? And so it can be really daunting and traumatizing, because you're also trying to hold together a marriage, right? And create that safety in your marriage. And if you say to your spouse, your parents are the devil, it doesn't matter. It's still that person's parents. They're likely going to snap back at you. This is not the way to go about it. So that's why I thought that the support group would be really beneficial.
I love it. I mean, it's just brilliant idea. Well, thank you so much, Marnie. Did I forget? I mean, I know I forgot stuff.
No, but I love talking to you. We always like.
Well, I'm trying to plan a trip to. Are you in Toronto?
I'm in Montreal right now.
Montreal. Okay, we're trying to plan a trip to Canada, hopefully this fall. So
well,
maybe we'll meet in person one of these months.
Yeah, you'll have to let me, because I also go to Toronto a lot too. So you'll have to let me know for sure.
Yeah, or let me know next time you're in New York, because I see your funky pictures.
Yeah. Hopefully soon.
But thank you so much for coming on and talking about all this stuff. It's really helpful for our community, but it's also helpful for me because Chris and I are working on our next book, and it's about how to help kids in these situations. So
I love that.
So much of what you said, I was like, this is amazing. And I love that it's things that that we can do for ourselves and for our children. It's not like, well, you kind of just hope for the best, because it's never going to happen.
No, there are really constructive things that we can do that make all the difference in the world, for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. And we'll catch up again and do another one.
We will. Bye.
Okay.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.